Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 4 of the People in Fundraising nonprofit weekly webcast. And today I'm very excited to welcome two guests from the Mennonite Central Committee in Kansas. They are my first guests ever after almost 150 episodes to represent Kansas. I'm excited for that. We have Ben Parker-Sutter and Maynard Knepp joining us today. It's nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. So if we want to start, please, with Maynard and then Ben, introducing yourself to our audience by your title, maybe how long you've worked with Mennonite Central Committee, and then we'll get into our regular questionnaire, please.
Yes, I'm Maynard Knepp. I'm Director of Donor Relations for Mennonite Central Committee. Central States out of North Newton, Kansas, is where our office and our warehouse is.
Excellent. Thank you. And Ben?
Yeah, I'm Ben Parker-Sutter, Donor Relations Associate for Mennonite Central Committee in the Central States region. I'm in my basement in Wichita, Kansas, so we're snowed in right now and enjoying it.
Excellent. Before we started recording, Maynard mentioned that he was out shoveling the path by the office where he's at. So, Snowy day in Kansas.
Yep.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about both of your career histories and the work of Mennonite Central Committee. So, Maynard, if you'd like to go first, please, and tell our audience how long you've been in the development world, how long you've been affiliated with Mennonite Central Committee, and then Ben, the same question for you, please.
Yeah, I started working with MCC back in 2008. I was introduced to MCC in 2006 in one of their programs, which was they have a custom mobile meat canner, and I was not familiar with MCC at all, but got involved with that, and then later was hired to be their warehouse manager for their material resources. And during that time, I started raising money for different things within the material resources. And because of that, when the donor relations person left, I was put in 2010 in the positions of Director of Donor Relations in Central States since 2010.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And Ben, how about you, please?
Yeah, so I've been in fundraising and at MCC for about 2 years, and so came through, did some seminary degree in Anabaptist Mennonite theology, and then found my way towards the work of MCC. So fundraising is newer to me. I've done some marketing work, but I've been grateful to be a part of the work that MCC is doing around the world. And so, like Maynard said, we're based in our region is based in Kansas. The Central States region is 16 states. So it's like kind of anything that you can imagine in the middle.
Okay.
Montana to Minnesota, down to Louisiana, and over to New Mexico. So that's our area. So.
I thank you for clarifying. I was going to ask, just the geographic coverage. So 16 states.
16 states. Yeah.
Holy cow. Wow.
There's 4 regions. We're an international organization that is based out of Akron, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so there are 4 regions, and we have the Central States region.
Terrific. And do either or both of you travel as part of your job to the other states, maybe some more than others?
Yes, we are responsible for the 16 states, and so we travel to those states for events and to both of us primarily work with the major donors, and so to visit major donors, so we travel quite a bit.
Excellent. Thank you. Maynard, I have a quick follow-up. You mentioned working with materials. Was it Materials Center, Materials Resources?
Yeah, we have a center here where we collect uh, material for international relief
Okay.
that is shipped. We work in 47 different countries
Wow.
internationally where we ship uh, to disaster places, be it via political or economical or weather patterns. Yeah. So we collect a lot of different materials to ship.
Okay. Interesting. That's a great segue, and thank you both for introducing yourselves and telling us a bit about your career path. I'd love to hear, a bit about the overview of Mennonite Central Committee's mission. And Maynard, you just talked about
Mm.
shipping resources internationally as a result of various crises.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know much about Mennonite Central Committee or the Mennonite religious community, so I'm imagining that it's an outgrowth of putting faith into action.
Yeah, it started 104 years ago
Mm,
on PC Hebert's porch in Hillsboro, Kansas, where he was aware that the Mennonite church, there was Mennonites in Russia that were starving
mm,
because of drought and because of the political climate.
okay.
And the Mennonite Church and the Brethren in Christ Church and the Mennonite Brethren Church, they were all doing different things in responding to brothers and sisters back in their basically their homeland. And so they decided, PC Hebert decided that we need to get together, put our theology aside, and work together and develop a central organization that can we can filter money through to respond to the starvation in Russia. That was 104 years ago. We were set up as a temporary organization.
Oh,
104 years ago, we're still working together. And so we have a board of directors that involves the Mennonites, the Mennonite Brethren, the Brethren in Christ, the Conservative Church, the Amish Church, all representatives, to where we can do our mission is relief, development, and peace work in the name of Christ.
mm,
What we do is we don't develop programs, but we support ongoing missions that are being done internationally. We are the international part of relief, development, and peace in the name of Christ.
that's beautiful. That's very admirable. Thank you for sharing that. Ben, anything you'd like to add to Maynard's comments, please?
Sure. Yeah. I think what he kind of hinted at, we really work with partners in each country, and we have country reps in countries, but really our programs are led and directed from within the countries themselves. And one of the things that we say is that like we come when we're called.
Mm,
And so, in the sense of in the Russia story from 100 years ago, folks were hearing from their families like we need support, we need a piece of bread and a bowl of soup, and so MCC answered that call, and that's the way it continues to work now, is that we listen to the program needs of the folks in the country,
mm.
and yeah, respond as we're able. So
Terrific. Thank you. I'm wondering, as I was listening to both of you talk, you mentioned partnerships with other organizations. Do you also partner with, perhaps other Christian organizations or the American Red Cross, International Red Cross, depending on the size of the crisis in
Yeah,
happening?
it depends on the size of the crisis. That sometimes and partners that we work with, there might be other organizations that also contribute to their work. I know in Latin America, Catholic Charities does a lot of work down there. We have a certain partner that is with the Catholic Charities. It
Okay.
was started by the Catholic Charities, but there's a wing of it that does a lot of peace work and agriculture development that we then also partner with them to and help with the funding of and the training and development of those programs. So yeah, it's we do partner with other organizations at times.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, it's just nice to know. And I haven't had very many guests on that represent a sector outside of healthcare or higher education. And for me, personally, religion is a big part of my life as well. So I really welcome hearing what you have to share about your work. So thank you for that. My next question is a quote that I've used a few times in prior interviews, and I really like it because it gets at the sense of who my guest is professionally, personally, and perhaps this can weave into your work with Mennonite Central Committee. It comes from Arthur Brooks, who is a social scientist. He also writes for the Atlantic magazine and website. And I admire him for a lot of reasons. One of them is he's also pretty comfortable and being vocal about his Catholic faith, his deep Catholic faith. He converted, I think, when he was a young adult. And so I want to read this quote, and then if you have anything you'd like to share about how it resonates with you both, I'd love to hear that, please. So Arthur Brooks, in an article once said, quote, "The happiest people, according to the best studies, have a balanced portfolio between four things: the transcendental, which are the spiritual things bigger than you; your family; your communities, the third, which is your service and friendships; and fourth, earning success through meaningful work that creates value." So again, faith, family, community, and work, close quote. So as you read or just now heard Arthur's observation, what stands out to both of you, please, about those four ingredients of a well-balanced portfolio in your lives?
Yeah, for me, it is meaningful work.
Yeah.
I had a business outside of MCC before going to work for MCC. I traveled as a learning tour as a volunteer before working at MCC and saw some of their work internationally. I was really moved by it. It gave me an understanding of the spirit that I'd never experienced before, walking among the poor and walking among people in Burundi who had just dealt with severe trauma and violence, and to see the effect of what a little bit of material resources can make in their lives was very impactful for me, was life-changing, transforming for me, and made me realize that at the end of my life, what was going to be important was not the success of my tree business and the amount of money that is left at the end of my life, or how nice a place that I live, but doing something that was meaningful for me and that would also be touching for someone else, that could be life-giving for someone else. And I experienced that. And that's what made me not question the phone call when I got to ask to apply to come to work for MCC, which was definitely a big decrease in pay for what I was doing. But it is, for me, is life-giving work. That it was when I was there, is seeing the material being handed out, and also now in connecting people with their legacy to that work.
I just wrote that down, Maynard. Life-giving work. That's very beautiful summation of the work you are doing. Sounds like a very transformative experience for you.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Ben, how about you, please?
Yeah, when I saw this quote, I mean, I think the for me the transcendental element of it kind of encompasses all of it for me. So like from my family, from my community, and through my work, really seeing all of those pieces kind of working towards the spiritual things that are bigger than me. Recognizing that some of us in the Anabaptist tradition will talk about, and in the Christian tradition will talk about, God's shalom, God's dream for the world. And so yeah, so I see, the way that I interact with my family, the way that I interact with my community or my faith, with my friendships, and then especially my work as well, all working towards trying to catch a glimpse of what God is doing in the world, trying to catch a glimpse of that shalom, that both is kind of like building and growing, and that I both have a part in and can't do by myself. And so yeah, when I see this quote, that's kind of where I go is that vision of God's shalom, God's justice, God's kind of trueness in the world, and doing any part that I can to help make that more visible in the world.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Ben. That was beautifully put. I wonder, for either or both of you, seeing the impact of your work in communities that you don't often interact with. So Maynard mentioned, going to Burundi and seeing the aftermath of the civil war there, and other international crises. How does seeing that work impact, in my mind, I'm going to call it your spiritual brothers and sisters around the world, despite our ethnic, religious, other differences? How does that maybe make you feel closer to, people that you are helping in this case? And again, like going back to that, what's God's dream for the world? Anything come to mind?
I mean, I think on just kind of a basic level, like it's I haven't had a chance to go to any MCC programs internationally yet. But kind of from the stories that we hear and kind of the videos or podcasts that we hear, um, it it continues to remind me that like the work that I am doing does have an impact,
Yeah,
and just really kind of from the day to day, it can be really hard to be like, okay, I'm gonna make that another phone call, I'm gonna make that another email, I'm gonna like have that another meeting,
sure,
and like at some point you can kind of get kind of dragged down to that. And not that any of those aren't like wonderful connections with folks, but
sure. Yeah,
kind of the monotony of it can get to you. And so for me, just hearing and seeing, yeah, what I would consider to be a very small amount of compassion that, one of our partners is able to give to one person, and the difference that small amount is making in their lives, is kind of what keeps me going, and is what I need to return to whenever I'm needing a little boost and needing to know that the work that is happening is making a real difference in people's lives.
And
yeah.
I also this summer was in Zambia, and I took pictures of a borehole that MCC financed, but it was not. We didn't put down the borehole. There's a difference between a well and a borehole. A well is an open system where you put a bucket down, and a borehole is where you put a pipe down and you pump it out with solar panel run. But
Oh,
what was people were dancing and worshiping and thanking God for that borehole.
yeah.
And I was so grateful that we're an organization that works through partners, that it isn't our borehole, but it's their borehole. and that God responded to them because now they don't have to walk so far where they used
Sure.
to for hours to get their water. They now have water locally, and they contributed. What I think is real success is when they sing and they dance around this borehole and thank God for it. It's not they're not thanking us, but I was grateful that I was there, that I could take pictures, and that I could sit across the table from somebody and say, this is what's happening here, and this is what your legacy can be. And even though you can't go there or we can't dig this, your generosity, your faithfulness is contributing to the faithfulness of these people over here. And to make those connections is very rewarding.
I am sure that, yeah, that I love both of your comments about that. That's very meaningful. For people who are interested in learning more about the work of the Mennonite Central Committee, perhaps donating themselves, where would you direct them, please?
Go online, mcc.org. It would be the first place to go to get some information. There's stories there. Yeah, that would be the first place to get information.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll put that in the link when your interview airs as well.
Appreciate it.
The interviews air on LinkedIn. I know Ben has been active on LinkedIn. I enjoy seeing his posts. So that's how we got connected. So, so for our final question, we have about 5-10 minutes left. I'm interested to learn from both of you how working for Mennonite Central Committee, this religious-centered relief service nonprofit, allows you to perhaps give expression to your own spiritual religious beliefs. And from an outsider, at least outsider to MCC, I imagine that imbuing the work you do with religious values and faith would be exceptionally meaningful. So anything you'd like to share an answer to that question, please?
I'll let Ben go first.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it kind of encapsulates the whole conversation. From the very start of PC Hebert's Porch, we have people who are willing to set aside kind of their particularities of theology to come together to do the work together that they know that God is calling them to do. And yet they have their own faiths, and they can stay within their own, they can hold to their own theologies, their own faiths, and understand what God is doing in their own way. And so I really, I mean, with MCC, I really appreciate kind of that push and pull, the freedom to kind of believe the ways that you believe, and also knowing that we're a part of this greater whole that has a lot of beliefs in common, but also has diversity in belief as well. And so I've really found for my own faith that kind of dialogue with others who are kind of close to me in certain things and further away in other things, that dialogue has been super rich, and just yeah, really helped me grow in my understanding of how God's moving and shaping the world, and what our role is in that.
Well put. Thank you. You're up, Maynard, if you'd like to share anything else.
No, I think Ben really summed it up there very well. Thank you.
Yeah, you did. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, and for me, I feel like as you were talking, Ben, you mentioned there are partners and people that are close to your religious beliefs in some areas and a little further apart in others. I grew up Catholic in southeastern Massachusetts, and it's still a big part of my I guess my personal makeup, although my religious beliefs are different now. I converted about 25 years ago to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Living in Utah, met my wife through that church in Massachusetts. So I definitely, have some similarities, and and differences as well in some particular theology and doctrine. But I just really appreciate how you both have spoke so comfortably and movingly and with sincerity about the work you do, the work that Mennonite Central Committee does on behalf of our global communities in times of need, and also for what it means for you individually and your faith to be involved in this work. So I think that's important to share with my audience, to have people like you on that talk about, the spiritual aspect of your life as well. It's something I've felt motivated to draw into these conversations, and you both did that beautifully today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
And Ben, I look forward to continuing following you on LinkedIn with your posts.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Well, Ben and Maynard, thank you for your time today. I've learned a great deal. I admire the work that you are doing and look forward to following along. And for our audience, you can find Ben's and Maynard's conversation across various platforms around Easter in 2025. On LinkedIn, then the link to the YouTube audio video portion of this conversation. On Spotify and Podbean, so the audio only. And then thanks to Luis Diaz, a previous guest, my 100th guest, and his donor participation project, he is sponsoring my new website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. So across all those platforms, you'll be able to find Maynard and Ben's conversation around Easter. And thank you all for supporting this program, this podcast, by liking, reposting, and sharing with others. And Maynard and Ben, I wish you a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.